In this episode, Mexicali Rose, an artist-run organization at the border providing arts and media education and programming to the community of Mexicali.
The sort of demographic that we always cared about was the young generation of kids that didn't have many artistic options.
Drones as art. Several artists on the border are exploring the role of drones in contemporary culture.
Our drone would be about erasing the border, about crossing, and about the borderlands as a place of exchange and contact.
Paul Tournay's photographs of undocumented border crossers printed on galvanized metal.
The border really serves as a metaphor for transition, to go from one place to another, quite literally, physically and emotionally.
Tijuana's re-emergent art scene, flourishing in the passageways of the city's historic core.
Artists transforming an entire portion of the city and really trying to repurpose what this space could be for the city itself.
And border poet Manuel Paul Lopez's animated poem 1984.
In 1984, I loved everything at the speed of light. In 1984, I heard silence for the first time and kindly asked silence to quiet down.
Next, on Artbound.
My name is Marco Vera, and I'm the founder and director of Mexicali Rose Media Art Center. Mexicali Rose is a grassroots community organization dedicated to providing free media access to the youth of Mexicali. We basically cover 5 functions, which is free workshops for kids, arts workshops. We also have a community gallery. It's also a micro cinema where we try to screen works from local filmmakers. And it's also an internet radio station called RadioPajaroHombre.com. And we also have a community library, which features the work of local publishers. The idea for the space was based out of LA. I was living here and I saw different community organizations here, such as killradio.org or Echo Park Film Center, where I saw people working with communities, and every time I would go back home, I just felt like the time was right to do something in Mexicali, because that was a place where I saw a lot of talent and a lot of sort of missed opportunities in culture and arts. Something grassroots was, in order, and it was time to get that set up and going. So that's what inspired me to move back to Mexicali and start this community space, which the idea originally was just to do workshops, and it just started evolving into a gallery, into all these different other functions that we cover now.
This whole neighborhood's always been diverse to me. Since I was a kid, this was where all the cantinas used to be. A lot of live musicians would play their trio music, mariachis. But a lot of people just always associate this is so close to the border that it's like a more like tough neighborhood or like cholo neighborhood. And those things do exist, but you have to try to find positive aspects of any community, especially if that's the one you're living in. That's sort of like one of the main reasons behind Mexicali Rose. In this city in particular, a lot of the cultural options I feel are sort of reserved for people with money or, very elitist. And we always wanted to have a space where we could not only show art, but also teach kids from around the area or kids from different parts of the city. Sort of what we're into, whether it be muralism or a video, try to teach some of that to them. Because those are the generations that are going to stay in this neighborhood and try to keep it, or try to make it a positive place, instead of the way it seems to be headed, which is due to the proximity in the border. There's a lot of people that are moving in here and using spaces like this for drug trafficking or people smuggling, which is what used to happen in the space before.
Más que nada, esta colonia es la primera colonia en la ciudad de Mexicali. Es una colonia bastante peligrosa, tiene bastantes leyendas, mitos, infinidad de cosas. Uno se acostumbra a vivir en esta zona. Las personas que vienen de afuera le temen a la colonia. Anteriormente no había ningún espacio parecido, no había nada. Si acaso habían unas canchas de fútbol, todas rayadas por los cholos, pero en sí no había un lugar específicamente para que los jóvenes tomaran algún taller y tuvieran su mente y su tiempo libre, lo usaran en algo productivo, la verdad.
My name is Alicia Carrillo, and I was raised here in Mexicali, but after Mexicali, we moved to El Centro, and we've been there for over 20 years. El Centro is an interesting city. There's a lot around. There's a lot to do, but there's not a lot to do. There's if you like to be on your own, want to scout around, want to kind of live the lonely life, it's a good place to be. But as far as entertainment and opportunities go, it's not a good place to grow up, definitely. Not being able to get involved in art was really hard, mainly because I didn't really know what my spot was in art. I got an AA in art, but I can't draw a straight line for jokes. I tried different things. I tried painting, I tried drawing, and whatever I saw they were offering, I would kind of come in. But nobody ever did video, so I didn't know I could use a camera and, say what I wanted to say with a camera until I came to Mexicali Rose.
Mira, es que el respeto empieza desde tu casa. Empieza desde tu casa. Hay gente que la verdad no siente respeto ni por ellas y por desquitarse o por la frustración que traen, tienen tan grande el complejo de inferioridad de que necesitan tanta atención que no hayan más que meterse en la vida de los demás y en su casa, la verdad, han de estar peor que uno. O sea, el hecho de ser homosexual no implica ni le veo cuál sea el problema ni el pecado, o sea, la gente está bien, pero estamos en México, ¿qué quieres que te diga? O sea, siempre vamos a estar valiendo caca. La sociedad es una...
The sort of demographic that we always cared about was the young generation of kids that didn't have many artistic options here. We felt like that was going to be very positive for them, and indeed we found out very quickly. And so the need just grew and grew, and we started doing more workshops and more workshops. And based off those workshops, a lot of artists started flocking to the space. The space is relatively big, so they started asking if they could have an art show because the galleries in town were never going to give them a show.
I remember when I was growing up, it was hard for me in that time in the 80s to think that I could make a living doing comics or doing my art because the culture didn't exist. It was either you would graduate, you would go to school, you become a dentist, engineer, lawyer, or whatever, and anything that had to do with art-based was kind of like, you don't do that. So I think now there's the culture in art has grown in a way that there is possibilities of people making a living off art and generating that kind of idea of culture and opening a window for people to see something they haven't seen or don't have the access to say, I'm here, I exist.
I don't feel like border artists at the time were trying to find an identity. I think that the identity and the sort of mashup of different influences and cultures and subcultures was already there. They just sort of needed a place to show it because it wasn't going to get shown at the institutional galleries. So that's when we were really excited about, is to be able to show what was already there.
El documental que yo realicé en Mexicali Rose, pues fue acerca de un luchador, fue mi entrenador Iron Boy. Soñaba con ser un luchador profesional, miraba la televisión, miraba a los luchadores, dije, algún día tengo que estar yo ahí. Yo jamás en mi vida había editado un video. Yo en ese tiempo, yo no era luchador, yo lo admiraba. Dije, algún día quiero ser como él, quiero estar luchando, quiero estar en fotos, quiero que la prensa me dé entrevistas, usar máscara. Fue una experiencia pues muy buena para mí porque gracias a eso aprendí a expresar cosas que podía hacer, expresarlas ya sea en un video. Una pregunta muy importante, ¿cuáles fueron los máximos logros obtenidos a lo largo de tu carrera?
Mi mejor y mayor logro aquí en mi carrera, yo pienso que fue el verme enfrentado a unos grandes luchadores, si no es que el mejor luchador del mundo, Pirata Morgan. Yo tuve una trayectoria muy buena, que salía cada mes a Hermosillo, a Guadalajara, a Nogales, a todo lo que es el Pacífico.
Living on the American side of the border is definitely different. You know that big saying, the land of the free? I feel that as soon as I cross the border into the Mexican side. And I know that may sound a little weird, but there's a lot more liberty to do things around here. Just with the art, just in the art scene, like carrying a camera around, not a lot of people are gonna question that or stop you or whatever. And the American side is like, it's all protocol. You have to sign up somewhere and say that you're gonna have a camera, you're gonna be doing this and all that stuff. So it's just maybe little things like that do make a big difference. When you come crossing, you have to walk to those turnstiles. And as I'm walking through those, it's just like, yay, I'm free, I'm in Mexico. And it's also not like most Americans that come in to this side and it's just like, we're gonna go drink, you know? It has nothing to do with being free or anything out here in this part of the border. It's more of, it's a personal thing. I can go into a place and it's going to be okay. Nothing really is going to happen to me. Rather than over there, even in my hometown in El Centro, I don't feel like that. I always feel like a stranger or like I don't belong. I'm just there because that's where I live at the moment.
Currently with the workshops that we're doing, we're trying to expand and take them elsewhere. So we started a workshop recently in a community of Santorales, which is Valle de Misiones, and that's where they have a high school there. We took some documentary films there last year and we saw a pretty good response, so I definitely wanted to work with the kids there. Santorales is an area of the city, community that I associate a lot with Pueblo Nuevo. It's basically, we're also close to the border, a lot of different people from different parts of the country, mislabeled neighborhood, crime-ridden, abandoned by the government. And those are qualities where you can find that the youth there have a lot of things to say, and they're gonna have a lot more critical thinking than somebody that's got plenty of toys to play with, you know? So that's definitely a community that we wanted to reach out to because there's so many similarities and I relate to it a lot. One of our constant collaborators is Fernando Corona, who's an amazing muralist, and he's done workshops with kids with murals here and done some murals that reflect sort of the insanity of the city. So we're going to be working with a group of people that are also community organizers that are rehabilitating people. It's basically rehab spaces for people that are strung out on drugs. And they asked us to do a mural. They're involved with the Plaza del Mariachi, which is a very traditional part of town where if you want to hire a norteño band or a mariachi, that's where you go and you hire the musicians there. It's also been very troubled. You know, there's a lot of people there that get deported, and that's the place to hang out and sleep for a while or find shelter. But the cops really are just very hostile towards them. So we're going to try to do something that reflects that part of town, the mariachi area, and sort of make the space a little more beautiful for these people that are there, whether they be people that are deported, people that go visit the park. Just trying to make public space a little more beautiful in our city.
El día de hoy, viernes, les repetimos, la exposición se titula Singularidad en Tiempo, Espacio de Complejidad de Charles Glaubitz, aquí en Mexicali Rose en punto de las 8 de la noche. La admisión es totalmente libre, ya lo saben. Avenida Colima entre 6ª y 7ª de la colonia Pueblo Nuevo.
Es muy importante tener un centro comunitario como lo es Mexicali Rose. Más que nada para toda la sociedad de jóvenes que vemos aquí en Mexicali, la verdad. Y nosotros tenemos la oportunidad de tener a Mexicali Rose completamente gratuito y lo seguirá haciendo.
Many people have to cross over to the US to find opportunities. Whether it's school, an art, work, whatever it is. For me, my opportunities, I found them here. They've come out of this place.
What I really love the most about Mexicali Rose is it's not somebody's space. It's not my space. It's not Paulo's space. It's not Alicia's space. Everybody that comes here feels a connection with the house, with the space, with the art being shown. And they have no clue who's running things because it's a community organization. So anybody that walks in the door can get as involved as they want to be. So you can't help but feel that when you come into this space, even as an outsider, I think that no matter what, you're going to feel a pride in this neighborhood. I have a love-hate relationship with this neighborhood, really. I mean, I get sick of all the times that they've tried to break in or they've stolen stuff from us, or, you know, like all the meth heads and junkies that are lying around. But you got to find the positive aspects of it, and you can't just, like, you know, jump ship. You have to try to build something positive, and I think that art is a perfect vehicle for that.
My name is Ruben Ortiz Torres. I am a visual artist. I am also a professor of the University of California in San Diego, and I am here collaborating with Artbound. I wrote the drone article because it seems the timing was right. This is an important subject in Southern California, particularly in San Diego, where I teach. These machines are very cutting edge, and they involve this new robotics technology and these new materials. And some other colleagues and professors have been doing research and put together an exhibition about artists and drones. I was pleased with the video because I thought visually was compelling. You know, I was expecting something more, perhaps more like a journalistic clip or something.
The drone is becoming a symbolic object of the times that we live in because it is this new technology and this new way to create art. The new wars are not being fought by individuals against individuals, but now we have technology that does the dirty work for us without the psychological implications of having to kill a person. These three art pieces are making us aware not just of the use of these devices and how they exist, but also of the possibilities of how we could recontextualize them or recycle them.
The drone box project, or Drone Ready Made as it's known, is essentially our first collaborative project.
James likes to surf Craigslist for odd materials, and we were sitting at home one night and he's like, I need $300. I found this drone box. I've got to have it.
This very complicated and complex shell or encasement system was just showing up as a piece of junk. I think for me, it wasn't so much the question of what it would become, just that it would be reused.
Once we got it up on the casters, we started to realize it is a two-person camper shell. So we stripped it down, outfitted the inside with 2 simple subfloors, carpeted, built interior seating, a little electrical, 2 fans to make it breathable, and simple lighting that could run on a generator.
You can start to see how it's been outfitted as a sort of functional or livable space. And it's actually a pretty ergonomic space. It's actually really cozy.
The second we pull this thing out of our space and we start pushing it down the street, it enters this realm of performance where conversations are coming up.
It's a Predator drone being painted on an airplane, trying to convert it into an apartment.
When people find out what the drone box is, they're terrified of it, and they think of this massive 27-foot-long killing machine. They wonder immediately why it was discarded or why you have it. It seems like too much to just be trash. It's too significant of a manufactured object to just be left alone. We've used it as a teaching tool to engage in conversations and to try to include people in the project and the greater aspirations that we have for educational programming.
Trevor Plagin is an artist that almost seems like a character from the X-Files. He, with a group of other people, hacks or uses different technology to do surveillance on the activities of the government and the military. He was able to access some footage that was taken from a drone coming from what we think is probably Afghanistan. And the footage is actually black and white, and it's very abstract. And it's very similar to the kind of footage that we see on news or on TV that represents the war in this very abstract way, almost like this kind of technological spectacle, where it almost looks like a video game, but we don't actually see the tragedy of death or bodies. Alex Rivera is a filmmaker who has done science fiction movies that deal with the border, with migration, with new technology.
Here in the US, the first conversations about using drones here at home were held by anti-immigrant vigilantes. These border vigilantes said, if the government doesn't put drones on the border, we will. And so they filmed the borderlands from this remote control airplane. And the vigilantes were able to say to the press, we have more technology on the border than the government does. These vigilantes were able to do almost an act of performance art and shame the government into putting these $15 million flying robots into the skies over the border. So in 2005, my collaborator Angel Nevarez and I were thinking about how to make a drone that would be the opposite of that vigilante drone. And we came up with this concept that we called the low drone. Their drone is about surveillance, paranoia, nationalism. Our drone would be about erasing the border, about crossing, and about the borderlands as a place of exchange and contact. Instead of it being invisible, let's make it very visible. And then we started to think about Latino aesthetics, and we're attracted to the look of lowriders because lowriders hop, and our drone is essentially hopping over the border. Drones are fascinating because they are used to hunt people, they're used to kill people. They're this very powerful icon, but they also represent a shift that's happening across all of our lives in many ways.
I think it's not necessarily that these art pieces are revealing or showing us how these machines work or are used, because they are certainly not the big narrative pieces that are explaining us the drama of war. But I think these pieces are hinting at the possibility of using all this effort, all this technology, all this intelligence that is being used to create these things in a different direction, trying to find a better use for these things and to change the purpose of these devices.
My name is Kim Stringfellow. I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I work out of Joshua Tree, but I teach down in San Diego at SDSU. I'm also working on a side project called ARID, which is a desert journal of art, design, and ecology. The first project that we're featuring is a photographer, Paul Tournay. Paul is following the role of the social documentarian photographer, and he's been doing extensive work on the border, dealing with undocumented men and women that are traveling across for work or life, here in the States. I would say with Paul's work, there's two exhibition spaces. There is the space of the gallery, the museum, that traditional white cube, but then there's also the space, the site-specific space of the border fence. And that's a completely different audience. That is the audience of the people that he's actually documenting and photographing. And that's something that I think is hard with that type of work. It's difficult, it's problematic. And are you taking advantage of people through this work? Well, I think he's been careful and thought about this, and it's maybe what can I do to bring this back and do this for the people that I'm actually photographing. That's for me what is important with Paul's project.
You're always, in some ways, in a state of uncertainty of being grounded. It's a challenging place for people. The nature of the environment is tough, it's hot, it's dry. For a lot of people, it's a life of struggle, of trying to get to that other place. I wanted it to reflect a sense of a first-person journey through the landscape and what you might notice as you're walking around in this place. And some of the little details you would notice, little comic books, toothbrushes, shoes, remnants of somebody's existence being kind of left behind. To give a sense of that experience. And as an artist, as a photographer, my work's grounded in the idea of experiencing in a particular psychological space, in a particular physical place. The border really serves as a metaphor for transition, to go from one place to another, quite literally, physically and emotionally. For those that are coming from the interior of Mexico and Central America to make for a new life here in the United States, it's a key transitional moment. They're leaving something behind for something completely unknown. I did a project of site-specific installation work along the border wall, photographing migrants that were camping out here during the day in attempts to cross at night. It was a collaborative project, and I would photograph the person with a large format film called Polaroid positive negative film. And I would give the photographic print to the person I was photographing. The printing process entailed printing the images on pieces of steel that were roughly 16 by 20 inches, and each one would weigh approximately 30 pounds. After a couple weeks, I would drive back down to the location where I made the photograph, and I would rivet the images onto the steel wall, predominantly here in Smuggler Gulch, which is known for human and drug smuggling dating back to the early 20th century. The image would stay intact for a good year, and then some would deteriorate after a few weeks' time. And the nature of how they deteriorated was predominantly because of the elements. And then the Mexican government came along and put up their own placards warning migrants of the dangers of crossing the borders. I started photographing along the border in 1997. And at the time I was going through my own personal transition of my own sense of identity. I actually felt lost. I wasn't sure where I was going. And I thought I needed to go to a space and a place that represented a sense of discovery for myself. All the work I did in terms of photographing was during the day. They're kind of stuck. There's no real place to go. They're at the border. They're waiting to cross. And that pause, that waiting, comes with a heavy weight associated with it, the different ideas that race through your head while you're here. For the people I would photograph, that would become the most profound thing. I would photograph men who would leave their wives, their children, their entire family existence behind to cross. Every now and then you would come across an entire family crossing, and they were coming with not much of anything except for a backpack full of clothes and some water. Sitting out in the desert in the hot causes your mind to think about different things and think about what your life has been like and what it might be. And particularly for myself in photographing out here, I've gone through that similar experience. Each time I come down to the border to do work, it causes me to reflect and think about where I've been and where I might be going, not only as a person, but as an artist as well.
My name is Misael Diaz. I am a writer for Artbound, and I am also an artist working at the border between Tijuana and San Diego, and also between Calexico and Mexicali, and I'm also an educator. I grew up in Tijuana, crossing the border into San Diego, so my experience is also one of the border that is very fluid, very permeable. That all began to change in 1994 with the passage of NAFTA. Because you started having a lot more industry in the city, then people started staying there, and kids started growing up in Tijuana and being from Tijuana. So it started to also get an identity. Around that same time, there was also the speculation that it could be this laboratory for postmodernism. So thinking not just about globalization and the economics and the industry of it, but also the cultural side of it. The association with Tijuana and drugs and drug violence, I think, began in the 90s as well. It has this interesting inception around the same time as the arts do, which is this interesting parallel story. This all came to a head really around 2007, 2008. Part of what started happening is that Tijuana became synonymous with violence. A lot of the businesses that were catering to tourists or that were dependent on tourists completely failed or completely imploded. This was especially noticeable along Avenida Revolucion, which historically was the main street for tourism. That entire tourist district and that entire street, in a sense, started to die. But it also started to create the possibility for new possibilities, or the possibility for new things to emerge. You had a new group of artists wanting to engage the city and engage the citizens of Tijuana through the arts as a way of responding to the violence or as a way of asserting the city against the violence. Right now we're a few yards down south of Avenida Revolucion, which used to be the main tourist destination in Tijuana. They used to sell products that appeal to tourists, so old curios, souvenirs. And then in 2007, 2008, with the rise in violence, tourism completely stopped.
Sí sentías como inseguridad, ¿no? A diario había una balacera aquí, 30 muertos allá, secuestros. Sí se sentía como que no podías ni salir.
Después de que la calle había sido una calle invadida por tantos turistas del otro lado, de repente era una calle vacía, una arteria fundamental de la ciudad que se vino abajo, pues era como la oportunidad de entrar y de pactar con los empresarios. Y ya con eso pues yo fui y les dije a los dueños, pues, ¿qué les parece vacío y lleno? Si está lleno por artistas no van a ganar mucho, pero va a tener vida esto. Los curios no van a regresar nunca, el pasado no regresa.
Una cosa que sí acordaron es que fueran más artistas, o sea, en ese momento eran 3 solamente. Entonces dice, bueno, si se juntan más de 20, se les deja esa renta. Y sí, se juntaron más de 20, o sea, llegaron alrededor de 30.
The experience of a city is a lot like the experience of a labyrinth, and I think that's just amplified in a place like Tijuana, where a lot of the architecture does have these interior-exterior spaces, which is how I would term it, I guess. So you'll come into a pasaje or you can pass by the pasaje 1,000 times before recognizing that there is this like interior street. And then within this interior street, there's even additional interior streets, and it kind of nested in that way. And I think that as I explore the labyrinth of the idea that is Tijuana, I've also realized that it's reflected in like the physical architecture of the city. And that's true, especially most clearly in the case of the pasajes, which flow unexpectedly from major avenues and then become their own major avenues, which yield further interiorities between buildings. And I think that's really interesting because it takes advantage of all these unexpected territories.
And I mean, and that's very much Tijuana as well, you know, like you see the architecture, you see the use of space in Tijuana. It's very resourceful, it's very, multi-purpose, it's very flexible. And I think that artists have aesthetically responded to that in the past, but it's not just kind of taking on that informality aesthetically, but really activating what that informality could be in terms of transforming space and, again, transforming an entire portion of the city and really trying to repurpose what this space could be for the city itself.
Or this is what you get. You get, it's not just a transformation aesthetically of the space, but it's a transformation in terms of the, like the ethics of a space and the ethos of a space. And that space becomes open to communities, it becomes open to possibilities.
The terminus of this walk for me is Parque Guerrero, which is where this musician called El Muerto performs every day at noon. And I got in the habit of walking down here because I was trying to book El Muerto for an event at the space. I think when I think of an artist-run space, I think of something that's kind of really neither here nor there. Difficult to term, and so you leave it untermed, I guess. If you can form a pocket of liminality, a pocket of autonomy from signifiers, then you can start to open up new possibilities of things that can take place.
I don't speak English, though.
Dice una chica coqueta que...
Let him say it in Spanish first.
Y le puse la canción Satánica. Vanidosa. Ella es ingrata. Ella es malandra. Ella es diabla. Satánica. Tijuana, Los Ángeles.
que los artistas tienen este lado de apostarle, de innovar, no sé, de proponer. Entonces yo creo que fue una buena movida de proponer el pasaje como un centro de actividades culturales independientes a una institución.
I'm a restaurateur, but I'm also a musician, and I'm also a promoter. But everything is connected to this love I feel for my city. And over here we have the entrance to Pasaje Gomez, which was one of these many alleys that are part of Avenida Revolucion, in which used to have a lot of activity, especially in the stores of arts and crafts, and also restaurants and cafes. And they were abandoned some years ago, and they were all closed down. So this is where the famous Café La Especial used to be, and the place that we're going to reopen. And this place was packed. It was people waiting in line, a lot of tourists that came, and sometimes still wander around and look inside the windows to see if the place is still here. Aside from the galleries, I think it's also important to have like a commercial side, so that the whole pasaje or the whole zone has something attractive to it, that people can come and have a drink and eat something good and then visit the gallery.
We often will have artists coming in or visitors who are coming, and they'll say, can you pick me up from the border? And the answer is kind of, unless it's totally necessary, it's like, no, like we're not gonna pick you up from the border. One, because it's right down the street and you can get here on your own, but also because for us, Otras Obras has something to do with, moving through the city and familiarizing yourself with what happens here. Is that there's a distinction to be made between people who are crossing the border to come to Tijuana out of a sense of tourism, and the people who are crossing the border to come to Tijuana for engagement, for critical engagement.
At the beginning, it cost nothing to pay the rent because they were abandoned. So you put the money, you develop it, and suddenly the owner of the building or the owner of the pasaje starts see again the potential of tourist potential about the pasaje. Then suddenly they decide, the rent is too low. We want to raise it, or we want the space back. It has been happening all around the globe. Anytime that something like this happens, big business start looking at your space.
As more and more people come to locations like this, it will become more desirable, and the businesses will get better, will be more successful. And eventually they'll have to find another location as artists to create spaces, but that's part of a life cycle, I think, of that's pretty natural with cities that I've seen anyway.
I think after such an intense period of violence and such a shutdown of community, or such a breakdown in community, I think these spaces really speak to a potential of reconstructing that community, or constructing a sense of what it means to be a citizen.
¿Qué pasa?
cuando uno ya no tiene este acercamiento con una institución, o sea, cómo seguir trabajando y cómo brindar también un espacio alternativo para los artistas.
A lot of these young artists, they are struggling, you know, so for them it's very difficult to sustain a space like this. You can see a lot of these little studios, you know, that these artists are creating art with basically nothing, you know.
Este movimiento hay que ver también que es un movimiento muy reciente y por tanto es muy frágil. Se puede romper muy fácilmente.
A cualquier gente dice, bueno, esto es una locura o estos cuartos están locos. Pero yo creo que el artista, las satisfacciones que busca el artista van más allá de cualquier, no sé, factor que tuviera que ver con el dinero.
I think what's at stake here is different, because I think the moment in which a lot of these new galleries have emerged in Tijuana was really a moment in which the city itself was trying to recover and reclaim space.
Si somos derrotados, la ciudad va a ser derrotada.
Here, they're not just creating workspaces, they're creating public spaces. And in my mind, that's a big, big difference.
Esto que sucedió hace 3 años aquí en el pasaje va a tener como cuando tira la piedra al agua, ¿no? Entonces va a haber estos pliegues de agua y ojalá y sea algo positivo para la ciudad y para la comunidad.
My name is Amy Sanchez, and I am a curator as well as an educator based in San Diego, but I'm originally from the Imperial County, and I'm covering stories and news there for Artbound. I wrote the article about Manuel Paul Lopez because it was meaningful to me on a lot of levels. Even just seeing the title of the book, like 1984, for a very literary public, they immediately thought of, the great novel. But for other people, for friends from Central America, for instance, it's a very violent memory of a civil war. He's creating this narrative where you're getting all of these elements of a 1980s childhood, but also I think a lot of these really meaningful particular memories about what it is to grow up in the border and what it is to be a border child. I was really excited when I found out that so many people had voted for the article. I was really happy to see that support from the community, and I think in terms of the video, it's wonderful. It was beautiful to see it come alive. He's using a lot of influences from, kind of graphic culture, thinking about comics, thinking about that kind of mass media production. So then to see that point of inspiration bloom and blossom in this animation, I thought was very soothing.
In 1984, I didn't read 1984 because I was really young and couldn't read that well. And even if I could have, I probably wouldn't have read it because who wants to read a big, fat, boring book about a miserable year anyway? In 1984, I grew up beneath my big brother Carlos's watchful eyes. I'd eventually learned that my big brother Carlos's eyes were so enlarged because he had a condition. His nickname was El Tecolote. El Tecolote watched everything I did with those big, aqueous, owl-like eyes. He watched everything I did with that condition, El Tecolote. In 1984, I didn't read Schopenhauer, even though I would eventually read Schopenhauer in high school, a time when I flexed my cerebral cortex like a Tony Atlas bicep because somehow I knew more than anyone did at my school, even though they didn't know it yet. I'd read Schopenhauer and they hadn't. This profound truth, however, did little to stop the sweaty jock fixated on snapping wet towels across my back. If I could have, I would have read Schopenhauer in 1984. If I could have, I would have stolen every single towel from every single school gymnasium in the world and hid them in the basement of some unidentified human torture museum on the moon. In 1984, my favorite word to write on papers besides my name, even though it wasn't quite a name, was 84. The power to abbreviate 1984 turned me on, even though it wasn't quite a word. In 1984, my cousin liked to say this turns me on whenever we watched Van Halen's Hot for Teacher video. I didn't quite know what he meant, but I liked the way this turns me on sounded, the way it felt in my mouth. In 1984, I slept with a humidifier on that sounded like one of those creepy slee stacks from Land of the Lost, except my humidifier comforted me instead of creeping me out like those slee stacks with big aqueous eyes like my brother Tecolotes. That thing's going to warp your bedroom furniture, my mom complained, but it was the only way I could dream good dreams, I told her. To dream good dreams, I said. In 1984, my mom read me Mayakovsky before I fell asleep. In 1984, my catechism teacher sent me home when I recited A Cloud in Trousers instead of 3 Hail Marys. In 1984, I ate a large Papa Bill's pizza by myself and couldn't sleep for 2 nights. My mom finally believed me when I clutched my stomach and complained, I think I'm lactose intolerant. In 1984, I declared pizza my old most favorite food. In 1984, my bedtime was 8 p.m. In 1984, I pointed out my friends from my window, tap tap while they played hide and seek without me, 8:02 p.m. In 1984, I wished library books had buttons, a joystick, and a high score to beat. In 1984, I told the neighborhood El Tecolote raised his arms in the air one night and caught a shooting star with a muddy tube sock he stretched open high above his head. In 1984, El Tecolote wrote an anonymous poem for a girl he liked that used the word betwixt in it. I found it in the drawer where El Tecolote kept his chones. In 1984, my grandpa taught me how to cut rain clouds with a machete. That spring, we made wet confetti of the nimbai and stopped rain just like that. It was weird and kind of sad, though, because for some reason or another, I felt an immediate and inconsolable guilt when I saw a single bird standing on a tree branch looking up at an empty sky. I learned something else that day besides how to cut rain clouds to stop the rain. Someone or something might need water more than I do at any given moment. In 1984, Huicho's sister Gloria told me that it happened when her cousin Diego stole a pair of wings made of zigzag paper and jumped from the El Centro water tower. He got too close to the sun, she said, way too high, and with his wings on fire, he fell down and couldn't survive the fall. But he was brave, she said, and looked so beautiful up there. I guess that's what big kids tell small kids when they need to explain things like death. In 1984, I memorized the lyrics to every song on Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil album. Motley Crue's songs turned me on, too. In 1984, my grandfather cried when Count Basie died. Even though Jose Alfredo Jimenez was our favorite singer, I cried too because my grandfather cried. In 1984, I sang Born in the USA whenever we crossed back into the States from Mexicali. My dad grumbled something unintelligibly. My mom laughed quietly into her sleeve, and El Tecolote only stared into the night with a creepy grin on his face. In 1984, my dad had to pull over every time we traveled long distances because I was prone to car sickness, puking on the side of the road with my mom holding a 7-Up near my mouth. I cried, quite dramatically, how am I ever going to see Moscow? I still haven't been there. In 1984, I wrote a long and shaky scripted declaration on wide-ruled grade school paper reclaiming 1984 as my own. The final line, because it's mine and not that crazy viejas Grace Jones. In 1984, I woke up one night to El Tecolote crying, intermittently mumbling something to the bubbly saliva-sounding effect, I hate this condition, I hate this condition, I hate this condition. The next day, I snuck into El Tecolote's room to see if his anonymous love poem was still in his chones drawer. It wasn't. Somehow I knew it wouldn't be. In 1984, I prayed for El Tecolote and still do. In 1984, I loved everything at the speed of light. In 1984, I heard silence for the first time and kindly asked silence to quiet down. In 1984, I cracked a fortune cookie in half and read, everything lasts forever but needn't be if one ever plans to breathe again. Because of that, I've always thought fortune cookies turn me on too.
Here we are.
Espaço entre eu e você, no silêncio grito sim e o não. pedaço de mim que é só teu. É intento sem tanto intenção. Quando eu vejo você, me olhando assim, vendo em mim o que eu vejo em ti. Qual razão é medir o imenso da sede, se cede sem sua sensação? Ilusão é a veste que faz te envolver, que me envolve, verte afeto e afã. Quando eu vejo